Recently, I made a video about DC and Marvel team-ups that I would love to see, and we prioritized heroes in that video. Today, we're going to be doing the exact same thing, except with the villains. A lot of people like to say that DC has some of the best villains in comic books, but there's also some very fantastic villains in the Marvel universe as well, and here are some team-ups that I think would be very interesting to see them go up against their respective villains, or whatever they have in store. The first one we're looking at here, and it might be the most obvious, is Joker and Green Goblin. This is definitely a team of villains we would want to see if Batman and Spider-Man ever came together to fight their rogues gallery. Of course, there are so many great Batman and Spider-Man villains you could team up together, but having the main villains from each of these characters just makes way too much sense, and also with the fact that Joker and Green Goblin, you could argue, are two of the most sadistic villains for these respective characters. Joker and Green Goblin would, yes, of course, be dangerous, but even more than that, it would be sick, it would be vile, it would be insane, it would be chaotic. They are the craziest wild cards these two heroes have, and them teaming up together, they would do some of the most brutal and twisted things just so they could torment Batman and Spider-Man. They wouldn't just stop at innocent civilians, of course. They would dig deep and try to get to the ones they love. They would do anything they could to ruin these guys' lives. Now, there's definitely an argument to be made. Could two of these really insane characters actually work together? Would their very similar mindsets actually unite them or tear their team down a little bit? That's definitely a conversation for whatever storyline you would go for. But in my opinion, if these two villains ever met, this is not some sort of simple story where Batman and Spider-Man come together to take them down. This would be a very tragic event. It would be very sad, and there's a lot of implications that would come with Joker and Green Goblin coming together. The next team up I have is Darkseid and Knull. I was just thinking of two primordial gods at the height of their power coming together to wreak havoc not just on Earth, but on the rest of the universe, to place their dominion over all life and creation, and to get exactly what they want out of it, to be the utmost powerful, to have all the control at their fingertips. Darkseid, one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe, the power of the Omega Beams, the anti-life equation. And then you match that up with Knull, with the Necro Sword, and the creation of the symbiotes, and not to mention the amount of years they've lived, the amount of experience they have, all the research and knowledge they've gotten into, all the powers that they've learned to control. Darkseid's got about 5 billion years on us, along with Knull's 13.7 billion years. And I just think of some really cool yet super overpowered things. What would Darkseid do with the symbiotes? What would he think of that alien type of creation? What would Darkseid look like if he utilized a symbiote? Or if they somehow mass-produced symbiotes and gave all of his parademons symbiotes to utilize themselves? How much more powerful, scary-looking, and deadly would they be? Would Knull have any interest in the anti-life equation himself? And what effect would anti-life have on a symbiote? Seeing these two gods of darkness unite with one another to take their grievances out on the rest of the universe, I truly don't know who's stopping them. Now, of course, both characters have weaknesses, but if you're going to want to play off of their weaknesses, you might need a majority of the DC and Marvel universe to come together to fight these two. I have another Batman Spider-Man villain team up here with Mr. Freeze and Dr. Octopus. I think both of these characters can more or less be seen as an anti-villain, two characters who may have noble goals, trying to do it to save somebody, or trying to do it to prove some sort of point, to prove themselves. But the way they're going about it is more or less evil. I think they might have a lot of common looking at one another and realizing they're both in these situations where their experiments just took them too far, and now they are forever bound to the fate they hold. Mr. Freeze constantly needing to be at a freezing temperature to survive and always living his days in his freeze suit, whereas Dr. Octopus will now forever have those arms conjoined to his body. I mean, they're both geniuses. Perhaps there's a situation where both of them could just put their brains together and they could figure out some sort of cure for Nora, or a way to remove the arms from Dr. Octopus in the first place, how to cure Mr. Freeze himself. I also think it would be really interesting to have those two geniuses have to go up against Batman and Spider-Man, another two respective geniuses. When you look at Mr. Freeze, he is often a character or a villain that we do tend to pity, and especially with Dr. Octopus, at least in the mainstream media, when we look at him through that lens, he is also another character we do show a lot of pity or mercy towards too, and maybe this could be a team up that Batman and Spider-Man actually have to help them by the end of the story. Okay, the next one I have is Sinestro and Doctor Doom. Now, these two characters I think could potentially have a little bit of a harder time getting along with one another, especially with Doctor Doom's more stoic personality and Sinestro's theatric personality. Doctor Doom is more reserved and calculated in how he makes decisions, whereas Sinestro can be a little more brash and tyrannical in how he perceives things and how he does things. This wouldn't be a team up in which both characters do get along with one another and they become the best of friends afterwards and want to continue to wreak havoc with each other as time goes on. This is only a temporary alliance. The only way these two characters work together is knowing that by the end of this, their alliance benefits both of them in the long run. Obviously, Sinestro wants more of a dominance. He wants control and power. That's what he's done to his homeworld, and that's what he potentially wants to do to others. Doctor Doom wants the best for his homeland. He wants the return of the former glory of Latveria restored. You could potentially do something where Sinestro offers him the plan to take on the Green Lantern Corps and to pretty much wipe them out, and ensuring the destruction of the Green Lantern Corps, in which now Sinestro could rule and control Oa. Doctor Doom could come into possession of some gift lantern rings, whether they be from Sinestro or whether they actually be the Green Lantern rings, in which Doctor Doom can use to his specific use. Now imagine how much more powerful Doctor Doom would be if you gave him a power of the universe in Lantern Rings. The next one I have is Vandal, Savage, and Red Skull. One of the biggest things about teaming up villains is making sure their egos are going to be in check and that they actually can work together well. And maybe that would not happen here, but let's just imagine that they could. This would be insane. Imagine Vandal was a part of Hydra. Imagine he had a huge history of maybe creating it or helping develop it, or even just simply joining it and some of the changes he would make to Hydra. Imagine how much more difficult it would be to take them down with Vandal and Red Skull leading them together. If you cut off the head of the snake here, yeah, maybe you could get to Red Skull, but if you get to Vandal Savage, he'll just come right back and continue this process all over again. You could do something where Red Skull tries to better Hydra through the experimentation, the understanding, the knowledge of magical energies and abilities, whereas Vandal Savage tries to better Hydra through the technological route. Basically, now Vandal and Skull have created a Hydra that could literally combat any sort of attack on their foundation. They could become one of the deadliest organizations that DC and Marvel has ever seen. Next up is Black Adam and Magneto. And the reason why I went in this direction is because I think these are two characters whose backstories and motivations do somewhat line up with one another. Both of these characters do what they do less in the sense of villainy and more to protect the people that they care or love. love about. One in Black Adam is for the protection of his country, and the other is for the protection of mutants worldwide. This is another Doctor Doom Sinestro situation. I think Black Adam and Magneto would have far more respect for one another, but that does not necessarily mean they would like each other or even like working with one another. This would be a situation where they would have to work with each other and they would both benefit at the end of the day. Since Black Adam's from Kahndaq, which is around Egypt, perhaps you could do a storyline where Apocalypse is emerging and Magneto needs his help to stop this even more evil threat. Perhaps you could bring in Black Adam's family like Isis, maybe even bring in some of the Shazam family. Magneto could bring in the Brotherhood, some X-Men who are willing to help, but at the end of the day, it would be Magneto and Black Adam leading the charge. Next is Lex Luthor and Bolivar Trask. One guy who has an absolute hatred for mutants and the other who has a hatred for aliens. You get two billionaire genius scientists together. What type of damage would they do together? How would a Luthor Trask Sentinel be able to mold its body and its capabilities and its power output to take on some of these other DC characters? Luthor and Trask teaming up together is just something you would be very fearful for. I could just imagine seeing it on live television, on the news, Luthor and Trask Industries coming together to create or do blah blah blah, whatever it is they're doing, and all the heroes, all the mutants around the world would immediately look at that and be like, something really fishy is about to happen. Why are they coming together? Trask would be more than happy to help Luthor find a way to terminate Superman permanently, and Luthor would be more than happy to give Trask any intelligence he would need on developing new ways to take out mutants and to end that gene pool once and for all. These are two characters that see mutants and superheroes and aliens as a threat to humanity, and they will do all they can to stop them. And then last for this video, but certainly not least, I have Brianiac and Ultron. I think this team up would be crazy. First and foremost, I think a big majority of them connecting with one another would be them downloading data to each other, trying to understand each other's programming, trying to understand the world from each other's viewpoints. Ultron's main goal is to destroy humanity, take over Earth, and replace everyone with machines, whereas Brainiac, very similar in the sense of being single-minded, very unfeeling, very calculating. He's more so of a collector. He loves information. I mean, these are robots, and at the very least, Brainiac being a half robot, half alien, if you want that to be the case, but data drives these characters. I think there is a chance they could come to an agreement. If we team up together, we can take on all these worlds, all the worlds that interest us. We will annihilate all the living beings on these planets, and Ultron can take dominion on these worlds while Brainiac gets to bottle up cities or capture certain things of interest to him and keep them as a collection. I think there is a way that both of these AI intelligence programs could come to an understanding with one another and start to wipe out civilizations across universes. There it is, guys, my choices for DC and Marvel villain team-ups. I really like villains and villain stories, and in all honesty, I would really like to actually see these characters be the main focus without being the superheroes comic book in which these characters are the main villains. I would rather just read stories about them as the main roles. But with that being said, let me know what you thought of some of these team-ups, and also let me know other Marvel and DC team-ups you would like to see. That is all I have for you on this video, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed, and until the next time, I will talk to you all very soon.